Hey everyone, and welcome back. You ever walk into like a totally new place, maybe a new office building or a friend's new apartment, and you're like, whoa, where am I?
Yeah, totally.
But then after just a few minutes, you kind of get your bearings right, like your brain just figures it out.
Yeah, it's remarkable how quickly that happens.
It really is. So today, we're going to explore that very question, how our brains adapt to new situations, and we're going to get some help from some pretty incredible mice.
Mice.
Mice. We're diving into this fascinating study from Nature. One-shot and torrential maps enable flexible navigation in novel environments.
Catchy title.
Right, don't worry, we'll break it down. The key takeaway here is this concept of one-shot learning, and it's way cooler than it sounds, trust me.
Okay, I'm intrigued. One-shot learning.
So imagine this. Scientists have built these crazy, detailed virtual reality environments for mice.
Wait, like VR headsets for mice?
Exactly. It's wild. They basically put these little guys in a tiny VR rig, and instead of fighting dragons or whatever, they're navigating these digital landscapes.
Okay, that's pretty cool. But why?
Well, here's the thing. While the mouse is busy exploring this VR world, the researchers are watching what's happening in their brains, specifically these specialized neurons called grid cells.
And grid cells, just to remind our listeners, are like the brain's internal GPS system.
That's right.
They fire in this really specific pattern, like a grid, hence the name, which helps the animal create a mental map of its surroundings.
So even if it's pitch black, those grid cells are still mapping away.
Exactly. It's how we, and a lot of other animals, can navigate the world even without visual cues.
That's wild. Okay, so we've got mice in tiny VR rigs running around with their brain GPS turned on. What did the researchers actually find?
Well, get this. They found that when they introduced landmarks into this virtual world, or even just like moved the existing landmarks around, the grid cells in the mouse's brains didn't miss a beat.
What do you mean?
They instantly shifted their firing patterns to create a new map, incorporating those changes like a super fast, self-updating GPS.
Wow. So are you saying these mice were learning the new layout after just one exposure?
It seems that way. That's the one-shot part of one-shot learning.
That's incredible. So how does that even look? I mean, are they watching these grid cells fire in real time?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. They actually visualize it as this like activity bump moving across a neural sheet.
A neural sheet?
Yeah, think of it like you're looking down at a bustling city map, and as the mouse explores, different areas light up. Now imagine you suddenly plop a bunch of new landmarks in there. The entire map, that activity bump, seems to like warp around those landmarks.
Warp. So you're saying the mouse's mental map gets distorted?
It does, but here's the really wild part. They don't even care. They're still zipping around this virtual world, finding their way with no problem.
Wait, hold on. So their mental map is all messed up, but they're still navigating just fine? That doesn't make sense.
I know, right? It's like their internal compass is just rolling with the punches, and that's what makes this research so fascinating.
Okay, so what's the explanation? How is that even possible? Okay, so before the break, we were talking about how these mice are navigating virtual worlds, even with these warped mental maps, and it's kind of blowing my mind.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So the big question is, how are they doing it?
Right, because you'd think if your internal GPS was giving you bad directions, you'd be totally lost.
Exactly. But these mice are finding their way, no problem.
It's like they have this backup system in their brains.
A backup system. Tell me more.
So the researchers think that it all comes down to how these grid cells, the brain's GPS system, are actually connected to those landmarks in the environment.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, they think it's possible that those grid cells have this sort of fixed connection to landmarks.
Fixed connection. You mean they don't relearn the map every time something changes?
That's the idea. It seems like those grid cells are really good at adapting quickly, but only up to a point.
So it's like they see the landmark and they're like, okay, I know that thing. I'm just going to adjust my map a bit to fit it in there.
Exactly. They're not really relearning the entire layout. They're just kind of warping their existing map to accommodate those landmarks.
Okay, but that still doesn't explain how they're navigating effectively with a distorted map.
Right, that's where the backup system comes in.
I knew there was more to it.
So the researchers think that there's this other part of the brain, maybe the hippocampus, which is involved in memory and spatial navigation, that's taking this distorted information from the grid cells and figuring out how to use it.
Wait, so there's another part of the brain that's saying, all right, grid cells, thanks for the info, but I got this.
Something like that. It's like this second system is more flexible, more adaptable, and it's able to take that wonky map from the grid cells and actually make sense of it.
So it's like having a co-pilot in your brain that can read even the messiest of maps.
Exactly. And that's what allows those mice to navigate so well, even when their mental maps are a bit off.
That's incredible. So we've got these two systems working together, one that's fast and responsive, and another that's more flexible and adaptable. That's fascinating. It really is.
But how did the researchers actually figure this out? Did they have to, like, open up the mouse brains and take a look around?
Not quite, although that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, a little creepy, but cool.
They actually used a really clever combination of techniques.
Like what?
Well, remember those 12 different environments they created?
Yeah, the mouse virtual reality theme park.
Exactly. They used the data from those environments to build a computer model
A computer model of what?
of the mouse brain. Well, at least of the grid cell system.
Whoa, hold on.
They wanted to see if they could create a model that could accurately predict how the grid cells would fire in a brand new environment based on the mouse's experience in the previous ones.
So they're basically trying to create a virtual mouse brain that could navigate just like the real mice.
Pretty much.
That's amazing. Did it work?
It did.
No way.
Yeah, and here's the kicker. The model that worked best, the one that most accurately predicted how those grid cells would fire, was the one that included that second, more flexible system. So their model only worked when they factored in this idea of a backup navigation system.
Exactly. It really highlights just how adaptable and sophisticated the brain really is, even in these tiny creatures.
This is blowing my mind. So not only did they observe this phenomenon in real mice, but they were able to replicate it in a computer simulation.
It's some next-level science.
It really is. This is incredible stuff, but I have to ask, does this happen in humans too?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
While we can't say for sure, this research definitely gives us some pretty exciting clues.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat.
The researchers think that this two-part system, with its combination of fast learning and flexibility, might be a fundamental principle of how our brains learn, not just for navigation, but for all sorts of things.
So this isn't just about mice finding their way around a maze. This could have implications for how we learn languages, how we adapt to new social situations, even how we master complex skills.
Absolutely, and that's what makes this research so exciting.
I'm ready for more. Tell me everything. All right, spill the beans. What was this final experiment?
Okay, so they've got these mice, right? And they've trained them to find this reward in their virtual world.
Okay, so like our mice are hungry, they're looking for a snack. Got it.
Exactly. But then, once the mice have learned the layout, they change things up.
Let me guess, they moved the cheese.
Not exactly. They kept the reward in the same spot, but they shifted those landmarks around.
Wait, those landmarks that mess with their mental maps?
Yep, the very same.
So the mice are thinking they know where they're going, but their internal GPS is giving them the wrong directions. That's just cruel.
Well, that was kind of the point. They wanted to see what would happen. Would the mice be totally thrown off?
Right, because if my GPS suddenly told me to turn left into a brick wall, I'd be pretty confused.
Exactly. And their computer model, the one that predicted the grid cell activity, it showed the mice completely missing their reward.
Oh no, so the virtual mouse got lost and went hungry. Poor guy.
Basically, yeah. But here's the thing. The real mice, they were amazing.
Really? They figured it out.
They did. Even with their mental max all wonky, they still managed to find that reward.
No way. How is that even possible?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It really seems like there's something else going on in their brains, something beyond just those grid cells.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more.
So they think that while the grid cells are important for that initial quick learning, there's this other system, this backup system, that's able to take over when things get really tricky.
So it's like the grid cells are saying, hey, I'm seeing this landmark over here, but something feels off.
Yeah.
And then this other part of the brain chimes in like, don't worry, I got this.
Exactly. It's like having a co-pilot in your brain that's constantly reassessing the situation, making adjustments, and figuring out the best way to get to where you need to go.
That's incredible. But if the second system is so great, why even have the grid cells in the first place?
Well, think about it this way. The grid cells are fast. They give you a quick and dirty map of your surroundings. But the second system, that takes a bit more time and effort. It's like the grid cells get you 80% of the way there, and then this other system fine-tunes things, making sure you actually reach your destination.
So it's all about balance, speed versus accuracy.
Exactly. And it seems like our brains have found this really elegant way to do both.
This is blowing my mind. So what you're saying is our brains are way more adaptable than we thought.
Absolutely. And this research really highlights that. It's not just about having a perfect mental map, it's about being able to adapt when that map inevitably goes wrong.
So what does this all mean for us humans? We're obviously a bit more complex than mice.
True, but this research suggests that similar mechanisms might be at play in our own brains. This balance between rigidity and flexibility, between having a framework and being able to adapt, that's crucial for all sorts of learning, not just spatial navigation.
So the next time I get lost in a new city or I'm struggling to learn a new skill, I should just remember those amazing mice.
Exactly. Your brain is constantly working behind the scenes, taking in new information, adapting to changes, and finding the best way forward.
That is incredibly reassuring. Well,
Yeah.
folks, there you have it. It turns out that even with a warped map, our brains are capable of some pretty amazing feats of navigation and learning.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into one-shot learning.
A big thank you to our expert for joining us today and for sharing these fascinating insights.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk about the brain.
And of course, a huge thank you to all of you for listening. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into the world of science and the mysteries of the human experience. Until then, keep those brains buzzing.